guys.
The Kosovo Specialist Chambers is now in session.
Please be seated. Okay. Good morning. Court officer, can you please call the case?
Morning, Your Honors. This is case KSC BC 2020-05, the Specialist Prosecutor versus Salih Mustafa.
Thank you. First of all, I will call appearances. Mr. Prosecutor, could you tell us who's present for the Specialist Prosecutor's Office?
Good morning, Your Honors. Good morning, everyone. The prosecution is represented today by Silvia Dascoli, the Associate Prosecutor, Filippo De Minicis, Associate Prosecutor for the SPO, Judy Mann, our Case Manager, and also Deborah Osborne, for the SPO, and by myself, Cezary Michalczuk, SPO Prosecutor. Thank you.
Thank you. Victims' Counsel, you have the floor.
Good morning, Your Honours. Good morning, everybody. Like yesterday, the Victims' Counsel team today is represented by Marie-Pierre Babot, Senior Legal Associate, Lisbeth Zechfeld as co-counsel, and myself, Annie Poels, as counsel. Thank you.
Thank you. Defense Counsel, please.
Good morning, Your Honor. Defense is represented today by Mr. Betim Shala, my co-counsel, interpreter, and investigator, Mr. Fatmir Belay. Mr. Mustafa is joining us via video link, and myself, Julius Wombone, lead counsel.
Thank you, Defense Counsel. Mr. Mustafa, does the connection work fine? Can you hear us?
Yes, Your Honor.
And for the registry?
Good morning, Your Honours. I'm Ralph Roach from Judicial Services in the Registry. Thank you.
Thank you. And for the record, you are appearing in front of Trial Panel 1. Let me see. Yes, before we resume with the testimony of witness 4669, there is a matter that the panel wants to address, which requires a private session. Court officer, can we please go into private session?
Your Honours, we're back in public session.
Thank you. Now, we will continue with the testimony of witness 4669. Madam Court Usher, can we please usher the witness into the courtroom? Welcome, Mr. Witness. Please have a seat. Please have a seat. Mr. Witness, good morning and welcome back to the specialist chambers. Can you hear me?
Yes, good morning. Thank you. Yes, I did. Thank you.
Good. Mr. Witness, today we will continue with your testimony, and now is the turn of the Victims' Counsel to ask you some questions. Victims' Counsel, based on the time effectively used by the SPO in its direct examination, you have an hour for your questioning. You have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honours. Good morning, Mr. Witness.
Good morning. Thank you.
Thank you, first of all, for your detailed and informative testimony that you gave yesterday. This morning, I will follow up with some additional questions to allow us to fully understand the crimes that we are examining in these proceedings and, in particular, their impact. You described to us, just to set the scene again and get us back into what we heard yesterday, you described to us how you had experienced Serbian war crimes. You told us about your determination to join the KLA and participate in the fight against the Serbian forces. You described the training you undertook. You said you gave your last money, and you repeatedly asked to join the KLA after completing the training. Indeed, we heard that it was one of those occasions that you were taken and detained in Slush. You mentioned it felt illogical to you. Can you describe in more detail your feelings about this when you realized that you had been arrested by the KLA?
In general terms, I was arrested by some persons there. So every country and every place can have good persons and bad persons. In the moment in time when I was halted there, it seemed illogical to me because I did not feel myself guilty for anything. Also, in the moment in time when I saw the victim at that place, we were afraid because in reality we didn't know why what was happening there. So we were not armed, we didn't have weapons, they did have weapons. And I didn't think for one moment to oppose them, but we left our fate, we left our life in their hands. On the one hand, I was hoping that there are other people that were different from them. And I'm speaking here with regards to how they behaved themselves while we were there. And I have also talked with many people who have opposed them, but they have been armed, whereas in my case, that was not what happened. So I have some other colleagues of mine who were not arrested, or detained, but nonetheless there were efforts to go under their lines. But the fact is that they did not manage to do that with everyone. I'm speaking here with persons that were already armed, that had the weapons. So when it comes to the logical, or trying to find some logic out of it, to me it seemed inhuman. To me it seemed something unfair. It seemed something with no relevance. It was frightful as well, so that is what it was.
Thank you. You mentioned how it felt frightful, and you already in your statement now also mentioned the one victim who had been very badly beaten and who, as you said yesterday, which is page 55 of the transcript, was almost dead when you saw him for the second time, and the fear that this triggered in you. How long did that feeling last? Did that stay with you after your release from Slush?
So this feeling, I have it with me even today, because it was some sort of crime, what happened there. Without taking into account, I don't know how to put it. So I think that a person cannot be treated in that way, no matter what he or she has done. So this should not happen. This should happen in no circumstances. And that is something that is stuck with my mind all the time, up until the perpetrators of those crimes are put before justice, and up until they are convinced of their illegal actions, because those actions have not been fair, they were anti-human, they were illegal, and they don't have to do at all with the human behavior, human feelings of a normal person.
Now, let me just move into one aspect of your testimony that we touched on yesterday, which links directly to the beating that you've described that you received yourself. And which was carried out on the bare skin, because you were undressed, with a button. On page 90 we have of the transcript, in particular lines 11 to 15 I'm referring to. You did describe it yesterday, but I just want to follow up with one clarification, because the record there is a bit incomplete, the court record. Just to be clear, did this bruising that you observed later and that you described, that you saw in the mirror, did that extend from the shoulders all the way down to your lower back?
Yes. So up until the lower back, it was near the waist, from the shoulders to the waist almost. So this is what I could see in the mirror after I went home while I was cleaning myself.
Thank you for that clarification. We've already heard that there's the fear, that the injustice that you felt from what you had experienced in Slush stayed with you. So just to follow up on this, do you still
Defense Counsel, it is, you can have a moment if you want to discuss, but it's difficult for us to follow if you are talking while the Victims Counsel is doing her interrogation. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. So, do you still think about those experiences in Slush now, sometimes in your life? And if so, what does this do to you? How have these crimes impacted on you?
This has caused stress to me. I've become nervous. I feel tired, out of energy to deal with that matter. And so the fact that the persons responsible have not been held accountable before justice for 22 years for different crimes of the same nature, but even more serious crimes, because the crime that was committed against myself was less considered as compared to other people in the case that I referred to above, but also in other cases, and which are known to the public.
So stress, low energy, if I understood you right, also sometimes disturbed sleep, are things you experience that you link directly to what happened to you in Slush?
Yes. I relate them to other events as well, and I think that there is a wider relevance in the way on how I see things. So, for instance, in the legal point of view, in the organizational point of view, and other aspects as well.
Would you like to explain this in more detail, what you mean by that?
What I meant is that when one analyzes these things, I think that the context is the same. These are things that have happened all over Kosovo. The reason is the same, the rationale is the same, and the actions of the people or the way in how they behaved is the same too.
Mr. Witness, there's only one more question I would like to ask you, and that is, if and how did those experiences maybe not just affect you, but also your family?
They had an impact upon my family.
I would suggest we go into private session first and then hear the answer, because this might reveal identifying information.
Madam Court Officer, could we go into private session, please?
Your Honors, we're now in private session.
Thank you, Madam Court Officer. Victims' Counsel, please proceed.
I'm sorry, Mr. Witness. We are now in private session, and so this is a more appropriate setting for you to explain in detail, and now you can do so as freely as you feel able to.
You are not hearing translation, Mr. Witness, or you are?
The voice is low.
Voice of the Victims' Counsel when asking you a question?
Yeah.
Oh, the translation. Okay.
No, the translation.
Yes, I can hear you.
Can you now hear what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yes, is
Something is. Yes.
yes. Can we proceed, or shall I call somebody from the technical department?
Yeah,
We can proceed. It is okay now. So probably there was a problem, a disruption, but it's fine now. We can proceed.
Very well. Thank you. Victims' Counsel, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honours. Mr. Witness, good that you pointed that out. So let me just revisit the question. I would like to ask you if and how the events in Slush and the subsequent impact on you also had any effects on your family.
did you you met there a trainer, a couple of trainers, you said. Did any of these ever speak about your political affiliation?
Yeah.
No. This discussion took place in the ODA, where topical issues were discussed by those present. It was during the time when Seydi Veseli and others were present. And that's when that political issue was brought up, who was the leader of the Kosovo Liberation Army, and that's when I expressed my opinion.
To be clear, this was before you actually started your training. Is that correct?
Yes, that's very clear. Before the training actually started, when the training started, I didn't have any discussion anymore with Fatmir Sopi. If we would see each other, we would just greet each other. We had our own duties and our instructors, and I had nothing to do with him anymore.
Thank you very much. Then you eventually started your training. Would there be a specific morning routine in the training center?
Of course, we had the morning routine, the theory, exercises, practice, tactical exercises, running, self-defense exercises. We didn't have shooting exercises because we didn't have ammunition, but we would just practice target shooting with air guns.
The early morning routine, when you would wake up, what would be usually the first thing that would be done?
The first thing we would do is clean ourselves, wash up our face, hands, and then get ready for the exercises.
Would there be a lineup in the morning where there would be kind of an inspection or people or...
We carried out our training in civilian clothes. Whoever had sports clothing like tracksuits, clothing more suitable for training would wear those. And of course, there was a lineup in the morning before going out on the ground to do exercises, to run or to carry out practical work on the ground, like for example how to hold the weapon, how to crawl, and these sorts of things. So these lineups were happened always, the lineup of the group.
There was a kind of a standard routine, as I understand it.
Yes, exactly. This is what I think.
Were there any women in the training of your generation?
I don't remember. I don't think there were women in my group. Maybe the other groups had females in their ranks, but I don't think my group had any.
And were there multiple generations joining each other in the school, or would it be each time a new generation that would, a new generation of participants who would be trained in or around the school?
There were of different ages, the groups. My group consisted of persons of different ages, but none of them was older than 30 or 40 years. I remember that the majority in my group were younger than me at the time.
And the training that you received, if you would, for example, have explanations about weaponry or so, would there be a special place where you would go to in order to have that instruction there, or would it be just in the school, or could you explain that to us?
Parts of the weapon, mounting, dismounting a weapon, this would take place at the school. We would do it one by one or in groups of 5 or 6, so that we understood what the parts of the weapon were, how we could put them together, how we could dismantle them, and how we could clean the weapon. And in addition, we would learn what the target of that particular weapon was, the minimum and maximum of efficiency of each weapon, and things like this.
Would there be, of your group or to yourself, assigned particular tasks that you would need to do during your training?
After some time passed in training, we secured the place where we were. We did guard duty. This was one of the tasks we would carry out after the training, and we would stand guard with real weapons. This was for 3 or 4 days, as far as I remember, and it took place especially at night time. But those weapons were borrowed from the instructors of the training. Those were not weapons that had been issued to us.
And if somebody else would arrive at the place that you were guarding, then what would you need to do if such situation would occur?
We would have to stop them, to ask them who they were looking for, and the guards were close by, not very far. There were also guards at observation points which were 10 kilometers away, and there also they would stop persons and ask them questions. Such points were in different places, so basically when someone would come there, that person would have to go through all those security aspects carried out by the members who were at that particular point.
And if someone would approach, let's say, the training center itself nearby and face a kind of a guard there, then what would that guard need to do?
just stop that person, ask him who he was looking for, and then call the person in question and inform him of the visit. But it did not happen during this guard duty. Nobody came, so I don't remember anybody coming who we had to stop.
Thank you very much. Now, at some point you have completed your training. As I understood, you needed to go back home or elsewhere. At least you could not stay in the training center. Did I understand that well? So when you had completed your training.
No, I could stay in the training center, but they told me to go home since there was lack of weapons. They told me that they would inform me once there would be need for me and once they had enough weapons.
Thank you very much. Your Honor, I would like to go into private session.
Very well. Madam Court Officer, could you bring us into private session, please?
Where and what refugees are you talking about? I do not understand your question. When you say where, what do you mean? The handover, I told you where the handover took place. So I was handed over to the person that was standing guard in front of the gate where I was put into. So if you're talking about other people that were around, of course there were people that were around, but I was not interested in knowing who they were.
And the people that were around there, could you give an estimate about how many people we are talking about?
If you are talking about the moment in time when I entered the place, I saw the person that checked me and somebody else that was standing by him. So your question before was a general question. If you are talking about the moment in time where I was kept inside, so there were persons in the surrounding area because I could see their movements through the cracks of the barns. I could see the silhouettes of these persons, and there were tens of people inside that I could see while I was being kept in the barn. So they were dealing with different activities outside. Whereas in the moment in time when I was detained and before I entered the barn, I told you that there was this person that checked me and there was another person, but that other person, the second person, did nothing. He was just, present there. I don't know on whether this answers your question or not.
Thank you very much. And while looking through the cracks of the wall, just to be clear, this wall, the walls of this barn where you were kept were from wood. Do I understand that clear?
Yes, they were made of wood. They are painted with mud and hay. So I don't know whether you know what hay is, but hay is mixed up with mud and then it goes through the wooden parts, the wooden panels. And I have never looked for cracks. But if you were in a certain distance, I mean, you could see the crack because it was light outside and we could see the silhouettes of those persons. So we could hear their voices as well. So this is where it was. The distance from the wall was about 4 meters, 3 meters. It's not that I was looking for the cracks myself, because I didn't have that intention. I was not interested to look for the cracks in order for me to see people outside, but you could see that from the distance.
Did you ever hear any voices outside?
He just said that, defense counsel, and I also said it yesterday. I mean...
Yeah, it's a step-up question.
But then I would suggest that you refer to what you already said,
okay,
and then you can continue.
You spoke about voices that you heard outside. Did you hear any voices of children during the entire time that you have been there?
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
At some point, you have been detained there. It was clear what you said about that. Did you have an idea about the circumstances of the weather, whether it was cold or warm or what it was like, the weather conditions?
So I'm talking about a normal temperature here.
Mr. Van Bonnet, we are approaching 11 o'clock, so just for you to conclude your line of questioning versus 11 o'clock.
And while you were handed over outside, could you give us an indication of what the outside temperature was? Or what the conditions of the weather was outside, the moment that you were handed over?
It was early spring, March, I think. March, April, something about that time.
Gives an indication about the month, but I mean temperature-wise, whether it was colder or warmer or raining or not raining or clear sky. This is what I'm trying to figure out.
Temperature-wise, outside it was about 16 degrees.
Here, Your Honor. We'll have some more questions after, but this is then the best moment to stop.
I realized that these last questions could also have gone into public. Maybe for the next session we try to, look into that some more. Good. Yes.
Microphone for Your Honor.
Madam Court Officer, could you bring us back into public, please?
Your Honor, we're in public session.
Thank you, Madam Court Officer. Okay. Thank you, Defense Counsel, for stopping exactly in time. Madam Court Usher, could you usher the witness out? Mr. Witness, we will have a break for half an hour, and then we will resume. Okay?
Okay, I got it. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, we will break now and we will resume in 30 minutes. The hearing is adjourned.
All rise. All rise.
Please be seated. Okay, let me call appearances. I see the same composition for the SPO, and the same goes for the Victims' Counsel, and the same for the Defense Counsel. And I see that Mr. Mustafa is present, and that the registry is not there anymore. Good. Madam Court Usher, could you usher the witness in, please? Welcome, Mr. Witness. Please have a seat. Very well. Defense Counsel, you have the floor to continue with your questioning. Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Mr. Witness. Can you hear me? Yes? Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Witness, do you know whether in 1999 Pristina was bombed by NATO?
This is a general question. Yes, everybody knows that.
Do you know the month or the date that that happened?
I can't remember the exact dates. The month was April, I think. April or May. I'm not quite sure.
And the training that you had in March.
Or March. I'm not quite sure when it exactly happened.
And the training that you received, was that before Pristina was bombed or after?
I think before. Before, because there was still snow there.
I will not mention the name, but at some point you have been ordered to get into a car. We spoke earlier about that. That moment, was that before or after the bombing, the NATO bombing of Pristina?
I don't know how it is related to Pristina, but the bombing in Kosovo started earlier, but I cannot relate the moment I was brought there to Pristina. I can't remember that.
Can you relate it to any other moment in time? The moment that you were ordered to get into that car. Can you relate that to any other moment in time? Or any other event in time?
No, only with the season. It was early spring. When I ended up there, I mean, where they detained me.
Okay, early spring when you were eventually detained, that's what you're saying, yes?
Yes.
Mr. Witness, at some point you were released from the place where you were detained. And if I recall it roughly, it's somebody opened the gate and said, you can go, something in that line. Is that correct?
That's how I remember it.
Could you tell us the road that you went to your eventual final destination on that day? the day of your release.
Mr. Prosecutor, I see you standing.
I'm not objecting to the question as such. I'm objecting to posing that question in the open session, because if the witness says which locations he was passing by going back home, it might reveal his identity. So maybe we could go briefly into the private session to ask that question.
Thank you for your observation, Mr. Prosecutor.
No problem. I just tried to do something in open session, but I understand.
I will ask the Madam Court Officer, could you bring us into private session, please?
Your Honours, we're in private session.
It is appreciated, Defence Counsel. Please proceed.
Mr. Witness, you were released. Where did you eventually go?
Home.
Could you tell us, from the place where you had been kept, which road did you take?
Your Honours, we're in public session.
Thank you. Yes, the panel may allow for a redirect examination if necessary, according to the rules and our decision on the conduct of proceedings. Mr. Prosecutor, would you like that? Would you like to do that?
Your Honours, no redirect. Thank you.
Any questions from your part?
No, thank you, Your Honors.
Okay. Very well. So that means that there will be no second round. And Mr. Witness, you have been asked several questions by the Prosecutor and the Victims' Counsel and the Defense Counsel. And it's now the turn for the trial panel. So we will be asking you several questions. And this will allow us to gain us some more clarity about the testimony you have given. And your answers will be valuable to better understand what we have to decide on. Yes? Okay, I will now pull up the document we will be needing for the interrogation by the trial panel. So if you'll give me a moment. Very well, Mr. Witness. Very well. We will start with questions in public session, and at a certain moment we will revert to private session to continue. Okay? But please, we are now in public session. Be careful with what you say. Although I will try to ask questions to you which can be answered in open session. Okay, good. Yesterday, you gave testimony that you were detained several days. That was 4 to 7 days. It's the transcript, page 69, lines 90 to 22. And before the defense already tried to ask you, or did ask you when you arrived in the place you were detained. And you told us early spring. That is correct, isn't it?
Yes.
I would like...
It was in the beginning or mid-spring. 22 years have passed. I can't remember exactly, but it was spring.
I understand. I want to pull up from the witness, your witness statement before the SPO, and which is ERN 082023TR-ET Part 1, Red 1, and that is Part 1 of the statement, page 47, and then at the beginning of the page, and it's on when you were detained, and then you say, nou ja, I don't remember exactly. I know that I went home, and the next day or the day after, the offensive, the Serb offensive took place. And these Serb soldiers came down from the mountains and expelled us from our home, shot at us, and that's another story. I went through a lot. My question, does this bring something back to you about when it was? Can you now relate it to this SERP offensive? Does it refresh your...
Microphone for Your Honor.
Also asked in part 3, page 14 and 15 of the witness statement you gave with the same ERN number. And could you pull that up, Madame Court Officer? And it's just to say that you also there said that it could be March or April, but you don't know exactly when. Okay. Let us go to another question. Yesterday, you said, and that's page 63, line 2, that when you were on the place you were detained, yeah, you would go to the toilet, and then you would have to walk outside a distance of 15 to 20 meters. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct.
SPO witness statement, part 2, page 27, from line 7 till, but you don't have to call it up, Madam Court Officer, till, especially in line 25, just as a reference. But my question to you is, when you would walk to the toilet, yeah, what could you see outside? What was there around you?
Nothing, just a field, a green field, and the toilet. This is how I remember it.
I understand that it is a long time ago. Did you see, you say, I saw a green field. Did you see any buildings?
No, only the one that I exited to go to the toilet. And there were buildings near that one, around it. And we were not allowed to look on our right or left, but just to go straight to where we had to go and come back.
The buildings near the one you were exiting, yeah? How many buildings were that?
About 2 or 3 very close to each other, almost attached to one another, and there were others a bit further according to the configuration of the terrain.
I might come back to this question, but then I will be showing you a picture, but that will be on a later moment. Yes. I would like to go now through the conditions of the detention you were in. Mr. Prosecutor has already asked you some questions about it. I would like to elaborate some more. Did you receive food and water every day when you were detained?
Yes, I remember that we were given food in a...
Please continue.
They gave us food in a sort of a bowl, just like this here with water, a bit smaller than this one. It was made of metal, resembling a tin. It was usually soup mixed with bread, like a porridge of soup and bread.
You were pointing at the carafe with water. Did I see that well?
Yes, here. It was of this size, like up to here of this jug, the bowl that they gave us, and it contained a porridge made of soup and bread mixed together.
So it was a pole which of a height of, I would say, 30 centimeters. Would that be a good estimation of the height, 25?
Something like that, about 20-something centimeters.
That's for the record. And that was filled with food. And how many times a day?
As far as I remember, twice, only twice.
Remember, did you have, how many times a day would you get water or something to drink?
I don't remember if they gave us anything else, just water, but I don't remember how many times a day, as far as water is concerned.
In your recollection, would you receive enough water every day?
Yes, yes.
And where did you sleep? In the barn?
I don't remember sleeping at all. Maybe I did, but really I don't remember sleeping.
Laid down, was that directly on the ground?
There were this place where they put the feed for the animals, in that place.
Was that in the hay? I don't understand what you mean.
In the trough where you put the food for the animals, it is like where I'm putting my arms, where the computers are. It was like that.
I understand what the trough is, yes. Did you have any blankets or covers?
I think there were, blankets. Not enough, maybe 2 or 3 blankets. I remember that they covered the victim, that they had mistreated one of those who were detained there, offered his blanket to the victim. And that's, I remember that there were blankets, but not enough for each and every one of us. I think there were only 2 or 3, given that one of us offered his blanket to the person who was brought in our room. In other words, he had to cover himself with somebody else's blanket.
Thank you. And as far as the hygienic conditions were concerned, was the place clean?
No, that place resembled a stable. It was earth, and there was some hay here and there.
In your witness statement, part 3, page 11, you refer to cattle excrements there. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct, probably, yes.
Correct. We do it.
Correct. I remember because we could smell. We could smell it.
Okay, and could you see it?
Yes.
PO statement, the same where I was referring to right now, you said it was not suitable for people to stay in there. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct. In normal circumstances, it was not.
To the next point, which we can ask you in open session, is when you were released, yeah, what did you went outside the barn, the door was opened, and what did you see?
On foot. I took another road.
Yes, I understand that, but I want to concentrate a little bit more on the place where you were detained, because now was there in that place, was there a fence around the place?
Guard.
A fence? Maybe there was. Maybe there was. A bit further, but not close to where we were. There was a small part of a fence. A fence is usually made of sticks, wooden sticks, to my understanding.
Was there a fence or not?
Is yours in it?
Not the one that you think. There was just one small part, but very far from where I was, about 30 or 40 meters further away. This is how I remember it.
Just want to know what you remember. And before, and that is page 32, line 8 of the transcript, you referred to a gate. Yeah? Did you have to go through that gate in order to leave the place where you were detained?
As far as I remember, I went out through the gate that I went in.
And could you, as far as you can still recollect, describe the gate?
Yes, it was a wooden gate. It was made of wood and plates, like wooden plates. And it was locked from outside, like our traditional doors. They would lock it either with a lock or with something. I didn't see that.
Thank you.
It was a sort of a grayish black color.
And was there something attached to the gate? What was next to the gate? Maybe that's a better question. What was next to the gate? On both sides. Do you still remember what there was?
As far as I remember, it was with the building where we were placed.
I see Mr. Prosecutor standing, but please proceed.
Maybe I could assist a little bit. There might be an issue with the question and the issue of the gate, because we might have here two things, and the witness might be talking about a different thing that we are trying to ask him a question about. So there might be a gate to the wider compound or a gate to the house. It depends how the witness understands that. So maybe it's good to clarify whether we want him to describe, for example, what is attached to the gate of the compound or to the gate of the house, depending on what kind of question your honors want to ask. It's just a question of clarifying thing, because we might be asking him about one thing, and he might be replying about something different.
Defense counsel, you have the floor.
Yes, it is the understanding of my team that the word that he is saying is to be translated as door, as the door of the place where he was kept, rather than a gate. And as you are posing the question as a gate, maybe that will clarify the issue.
The word I'm referring to is the word used in the translation on in the transcript, page 32, line 8. So
yes.
There was written gate and not door, and that's the reason that I'm using that.
Yes, but maybe we can clarify this issue.
We will clarify. Yeah. Mr. Witness, when you left the place where you were detained, the door was open. I will repeat what I have understood from your testimony. they opened the door and they told you that you could leave the barn. Is that correct?
Yes, and I left, I exited, and they gave me the laces, the belt, with the exception of those things that they did not return to me, and I continued. This was it. I was given, I returned those things outside the area, outside the building where we were staying.
You were given the things that pertain to you outside. Do I understand that well?
Yes.
Yes, that's true.
Then you were free to go. Yeah. And how did you leave that place? Huh?
I left without looking back. I just took my personal belongings and continued.
In the yard there, huh? Did you have to pass through? Did you have to pass through a gate to get outside the premises?
I don't remember that there were gate to the yard to go outside. There was only the door of the building.
The wooden door you were referring to, yeah, with the classical lock. Where was that situated?
At the place where we stayed.
If I put it in my words, but please correct me when I'm wrong, you are referring to the door of the barn?
Yes.
I will look at the parties now. Has this brought also the clarification we were looking for? I see the defense nodding. Mr. Prosecutor?
Yes, Your Honors, yes.
Thank you. There is another topic. We have questions for you, Mr. Witness. We now go to the moment that you were brought by car to the place you were to be detained. And yesterday you said to us, that's page 37 of the transcript, line 17, you said that you were received by a person with a beret. Could you tell the panel what, if you remember, what the color of that beret was that the person was holding?
I think it was black.
Yesterday we have been talking about the two persons who were called Salih. And one of the remarks you made, one of the statements you gave was page 105, line 9 and 10, that you think, you thought that the first name of the Salih in charge of Slash was Salih. And my question to you I will come to that later on. We will show you some pictures, and I will ask you if you recognize one or more persons. Okay? Madam Court Officer, could you bring on the screen SPO EOO 222614? Mr. Witness, do you see anyone on the picture that you recognize?
That I recognized now or that I recognized then? Or later?
Back then?
No. None of them. I don't remember any of them. I don't remember any.
Madam Court Officer, could you bring on the screen the picture SPO EOO 222582? Do you recognize anybody, Mr. Prosecutor? Mr. Witness?
I don't remember. I'm trying to recall whether this woman was present while I was questioned, but I'm not sure.
Is your answer that you don't recognize anyone from that period?
No. I said I was just thinking on whether this woman was present while I was questioned. I mean, on whether she was just present, not asking anything, but like I said, I'm not sure.
Thank you for that. Madam Court Officer, we can take the picture. We can take the picture away. Very well. I would like to go back, Mr. Witness. No, I would like to go now in private. I think that's the best. Madam Court Officer, could you bring us into private session?
Your Honors, we're in public session.
Thank you, Madam Court Officer. Mr. Witness, we will now take a break for 1.5 hours, and after that we will continue with some questioning. So we see you back at 2:20. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
We will now break and we will resume at 2:20. The hearing is adjourned.
All rise. All rise.
Please be seated. Welcome back. Let's call appearances. I see that the FSPO is in the same composition, and I see that there has been a slight change in the composition of the Victims'
Yes.
Council.
Yes, Your Honours. I lost my co-counsel, but only temporarily for this afternoon's session. So,
Very well, that is noted for the record. And I look at the defense team, I see that they're still the same, and I see Mr. Mustafa, who is present via video link. Very well. Now, we will continue with the questions of the panel. Madam Court Usher, could you please usher the witness in? Welcome back, Mr. Witness. Please have a seat. Okay. I will wait till some water has been poured for you. Thank you. We will continue.
Thank you.
From the panel. Mr. Witness, we are now in public session. I will ask some questions in public session and some in private. Yeah, now we are in public session. This morning, I asked you how you knew that the first name of Salih, who was in charge of Slash, was Salih. And you said to us that he introduced himself. And I refer to the transcript, page 51, line 10 till 19. Yesterday, in your testimony, you said the following, and that is page 95, and then line 8 till 10. Did that Salih, who told you, I am Salih, introduce himself to you by his full name? And then you said, no, I did not ask about their names. And could you clarify that for the panel?
Yes. He introduced himself like that, by that name.
What I understood, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just here to understand if you're saying the same. I understood that the person introduced himself by Salih and not by his names. So not by Salih.
Yes, he introduced himself as Salih, that's what I remember.
Yes, but did he also say what his first name was then?
From what I remember, and also according to the others that were present there, so this was his name. His name was Salih.
But what you said yesterday is that he did not introduce himself by his full name. Yesterday you said that he did not do that. And today, from my understanding, you're saying that he did do that. And I am trying to understand where it is that we might not understand each other.
I do not exactly remember, but I know for a fact that he mentioned the nickname Salih for himself, whereas from others that were present there, I remember that I heard from other persons that were there that his name was Salih. So this was not from himself that he said that I am Salih, but from others. He did not introduce himself with his real name, but he introduced himself as Salih, whereas the other persons that came in my yard and they told me that they were going towards Pristina, those that rested in my yard, those other persons, those accompanying him said that his name was Salih. I didn't know any of them. I only heard about this nickname Salih, and that was the name that he was called even during the time that I was having the training there.
Thank you, Mr. Witness. We leave it.
I said that he said that he was Salih and that he was in charge of the group that was in my yard. If we are talking about the same person.
To him as being in charge of this group.
Yes, this is how he introduced himself. For that group that was present with him right there and then in my yard. I'm telling you what I remember him telling me.
Microphone for your own.
What you said is those group, from which military group was that? What was the name of that military group?
BIA.
They mentioned BIA. BIA.
And to get it clear, that person, yeah, who was present, who came to your yard with the name Salih, being the head of this group of BIA, yeah. I will ask the question, was he in charge of BIA?
I do not know. He said, I'm in charge of this group. I don't even know what BIA was back then. Therefore, I don't know more than this. I don't know anything else about this group, but I was just telling you what I remembered him telling me. I didn't ask him what group that was, what his job, because I was not interested in that.
Now I will read out to you what you said yesterday on page 95, and that's a summary of what Mr. Prosecutor said, a summary of what you have said, and it's a summary made by the
Your Honors, we're in public session.
Thank you, Madam Court Officer. Mr. Witness, when you got out of the barn, when you were released and free to go, could you see from there, when you were outside the barn, could you see the school and the Oda?
I did not see any of them, but I think that one could see those two objects from there because the buildings are visible.
But why could you not see them?
I didn't want to see them. It's not that I turned my head back to see anything. I just continued straight ahead. But from that place, from that position, you can see every object or every building that is around.
Since approximately the school would be and the Oda, I don't know if they are at the same distance or less or more.
They can be very close to one another. So about 20, 30 meters or 50 meters maximum. I don't exactly remember, but they were close. In general, all the buildings there were very close. So that is something that you can identify by the satellite photos. I mean, everything was within 100 square meters, approximately. So there were not too many buildings there. There were not too many buildings.
Okay. In the SPO statement, part 2, page 7, line 17, we can pull that up. And then line 17, yeah. What I understood that you said there, that between the place you were held, the barn, and the place you had the training, and from my understanding that was the school, you said it was no further than 200 meters.
Approximately, that was the distance. I can't tell you exactly, but it was the distance. And because about the training and the exercises, we hold those trainings outside in the mountains. I don't know whether you're talking about the training inside or indoors or outside. Because, like I said, so we had theoretical parts at the school, whereas outside, outdoors, we had the physical training. However, in general, so every building is in that distance, because I can't really exactly tell you what the perimeter of the place was, but approximately that's correct.
Thank you for your clarification, Mr. Witness. Okay, Madam Court Officer, could you can please pull the evidence away, and could you please bring us back into a private session?
Your Honors, we're in private session.
Mike, please.
Yeah, I understand from Albanian that he's using word forest, not mountain, as is in translation. and it is different. It is line 13, page 76.
The witness, you said that there were trainings outside and inside, and the trainings outside, where were they held?
Around there in the mountain. Interpreter's notes, Mal in Albanian is a mountain.
There,
So about the gentleman, the mountain and the forest are the same thing in grammar. They are not two different things.
did you intend to say in the mountains or in the forest?
Mountain. So the mountain and the forest is the same thing, and the gentleman can tell you.
Okay, so then
Your Honors,
Mr. Prosecutor, please.
as this witness is also competent to a certain extent in English, maybe he could tell us in English what he wanted to say, really. Maybe that would fix the problem.
I think that is for this is a good suggestion. Do you intend to say mountain or forest? Or do you know what mountain means and what forest means? In English.
Forest. In Albanian have two names, Mal and Pil.
For forest in Albania, we have two names, Mal, which is a mountain, and forest, a forest. In the Albanian language, if we speak in the grammatical point of view, the mountain, Mal is a mountain, whereas the way in how we use them in daily language, it is a forest. So that's the only difference between the two.
Which of the two you want to use as being a translation of what you have been saying in Albanian? Your training in the mountains or in the forest?
In the forest, it's the same. I don't know how you get it, but it's the same. For me, the forest and the mountain is the same thing in the Albanian language. Probably in the English language, that's two different terms, but in Albanian, it's one and the same term.
Forest. Therefore, I think we can have a kind of confusion. And you can be in the forest without being in the mountains if you are in a flat country.
Yes.
That it was a mountain with a forest on it. Is that correct?
Yes, a mountain with a forest. We have a different name for the mountain without the trees.
That has...
it's called Bieshk in Albanian.
That has been a little clarification about language and culture. Thank you for this. And we all cooperated in this. Thank you. Good. We are in private session. Is that correct? Yes, so we are going to our next question, Mr. Witness. Yesterday, and I see that I don't have the reference to it, but it was also in the SPO with
You're in public session.
Thank you, Madam Court Officer. Mr. Witness, we reached the end of your testimony. I can imagine that it has been demanding to be here yesterday and today, and I would like to thank you for your efforts put into giving your testimony. I believe that your testimony will help in our efforts to find the truth. For now, we wish you a safe journey home. I remind you not to talk with anybody about your testimony before the specialist chambers. And this is the end of your position here as a witness. Thank you for now.
Thank you, Your Honors. And for the other part, you know very well that I haven't told my family even for this issue. And the time has come, instead of resolving these issues in your own country within a short period of time, that was impossible in Kosovo, and this is still impossible in Kosovo, and this is very concerning about me, about my family, and all the honorable people. Whereas I will be cooperative at all times, including in the future, and in case you need anything, I will be there. 22 years have passed, and I apologize if I was unable to explain things in details. I only spoke about things that I remembered myself, things that I saw myself, and things that have remained in my mind from that time. Thank you very much.
As I said to you, we thank you very much for your efforts you have put in giving your testimony here. We have duly noted what you said to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honors. Thank you all. I wish you good health and good work. And I hope everything will reach a result, all the cases, and that everybody will get their deserved punishment based on the acts they committed.
Past 3. We will first see if there is anything we would like to raise any further.
One last point, as a formal point. Yesterday, we discussed the issue of certain documents in Albanian language with this witness, and yesterday they were not translated into English. Right now, they are translated and they have been released in the legal workflow. They are disclosed for your Honor's inspection. Thank you.
Good. Very well. So they are. So for our information, they are disclosed now. And I see nodding from the team. This morning.
It's disclosure batch 96.
I saw that. Thank you. But I didn't know that it was the translation. Thank you very much. The victims team, victims council team, is there something you would like to raise?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
Very well. Defense counsel, is there something you would like to? Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Your Honor, may I? Yeah, I want just to know something. I'm not really sure about this. Does the interpreter have a right to give any comment in the transcript? Not to translate, to give a comment. Like example, in page 77, line 10.
Microphone for your owner, please.
You have made that request. I will give the floor also to the SPO to see what they think of that. But what is the point you want to make? Because you ask if they have a right, and I would like to know what the problem for you was, what the underlying problem is that we should address.
Yeah, the problem is the interpreter part, and does they have a right to put something, any comments, not to translate, but to put the comments on transcript? Yeah, but does they have a right to do that?
There is a procedure, yeah, for the verification if there are any issues. So if you don't agree with how, not you, but in general, if the parties, the victims' counsel, the panel is of the opinion that a translation is not as it should be, yeah, we can go through that procedure. And what we also do is try to resolve it in court, because this procedure can be a little bit burdensome, and because it takes a little bit more time. And if we do it in court, it is resolved quicker. So I would not speak in terms of rights, but I would speak in terms of clarification, what is said in court by the witness and how it is translated, to be sure that what eventually ends up in the record is what the witness said. And sometimes they need to make a comment in order to explain how they come to a certain translation. But if you have, if you think that the translation as it is now in the transcript is not correct, we can resolve it and go into the procedure which is for that.
Thank you. My question is not that. For that, I know the procedure, what we have to do with if we think something is wrong, translate it. My question is, does the translator have a right to put something in a transcript? Without, it is not it is not translation. What is this here?
My first idea would be, defense counsel, that if the remark is made in the context of making clear what was meant by the witness, I would not see a problem. But it should be done in that context.
Okay.
That, and I agree with you in general that we all have our own roles, of course. But if it's in the context of trying to clarify, and you are referring, of course, to the forest, and then in order to help us, they could make a comment to make it clearer. That would be my answer to you.
Okay. Thank you.
I look at the Specialist Prosecutor. Would you like to make a comment on this?
Well, Your Honor, I mean, the position of the SPO is that whatever serves the process best should be the approach adopted by ourselves. So if there is a linguistic issue that the whole discussion revolves around, and it's necessary for us to better understand, perhaps the comment of the interpreter is nothing that we cannot live with. However, if on a certain point the council, who is competent also in Albania, has got an issue, particular issue, he can always object, as he has done right now. But I think Your Honor has clarified the issue sufficiently.
Good.
Thank you.
And Victims' Counsel?
Yeah, perhaps just very briefly, a couple of points here. The one point is that, as far as I'm aware, other international tribunals, or I should say, at international tribunals where you regularly have to have translation, it is a practice that interpreters' notes are added to the record, and understanding the record as a record of what we have heard in court. And this also, of course, means, because we did hear what those what the interpreter added, it is important to have this context when later going through it. It certainly is also important to note, as has been done here, that it was an interpreter's note and labeled as such. But what I'd like to point out is that the Learned Counsel certainly was right in raising the issue in the first place, in particular about language issues, which, well, show where sometimes the discrepancies are and the cultural gaps that I mentioned at the start of this trial. So the record is certainly a little bit more than only what the witness has been saying. Thank you.
Good. If the parties and the Victim Counsel don't have not anything to raise anymore, we will resume the hearing till next week, Wednesday. That is the 17th of November at 9:30 for the hearing, for the testimony of the next witness, which is 4676. I thank the parties and the Victims' Counsel for their attendance. I wish to thank the interpreters and our stenographer and the people in the audiovisual booth and the security for their assistance. The hearing is adjourned.
All rise.